If your time runs out, then brother, you will get turned out. And if the clock keeps ticking, then nigga, you will lose no doubt. Shout out to Socrates, the Circle, Toronto, the whole thing, okay? There's a reason why I'm bringing this up. I'll come back to that. I always do. Don't believe the hype. Okay. Here's the reason why I'm bringing this up. There's a lot of bullshit in this world, right? A lot of obvious bullshit. You know, NFTs, obvious bullshit, right? There's a video right now, Martin Shkreli is on Vlad talking about how he sold an NFT to somebody and he's laughing at the idiots that bought it, right? It's nothing, right? But when NFTs were raging, people were pretending like that shit was something. Not everybody, of course, but it was obvious bullshit to anyone who was paying attention, right? Hamas being freedom fighters, obvious bullshit, right? Kendrick Lamar being one of the greatest rappers ever, obvious bullshit. But all these things have in common is propaganda, okay? And that's what I want to talk about today. How do you identify propaganda? And the reason I bring this up is because I think it's something that needs to really be educated. You know, people need to learn about this stuff. It should be taught. I didn't learn about the 7 tenets of propaganda until I got to college. And that was even more, like, I would say, a more recent thing in a sense, right? I mean, I went to college a while back, then went back in again. But the point is this. It's something that I don't know if they teach y'all in school, if they taught you in high school. I think, frankly, that they should be teaching this stuff pretty early. Like, I want to say, like, even middle school early. Because it's at the essence of information. We live in, especially now where we're getting bombarded with so much information in the world at a rate that our forefathers probably weren't getting. I definitely think this is something that people should learn early. Like, shit, even grade school early. Okay? Now, propaganda. I'm going to sort of tie this to propaganda, Kendrick Lamar, you know, in my opinion, the most propaganda-heavy artist that we have. Now, everybody uses propaganda, right? Propaganda is used to sell products, ideas, that kind of thing, right? And there's always something at the core of that. Obviously, as much as I go at Kendrick Lamar, Drake uses propaganda, A$AP Rocky uses propaganda. So it's not, of course, unique to Kendrick or anybody, right? It's a human thing to use propaganda. But the thing is, if you don't know it's propaganda, that's the problem. And propaganda often, obviously, wants to make it seem like it's not propaganda, when in fact it is obvious propaganda. And that's the worst. When it's so blatant and destructive, of course, people should know the difference. So let's start at the beginning, right? For those of y'all who don't know about this, I think you might find this enlightening. And for those of you who are familiar with the tenets of propaganda, please follow along. So, we're going to start off with the first type of propaganda, which is name calling. As you can see here, name calling is literal. This is one of the easiest methods of propaganda, right? So you're going to use insults to call out the perceived deficits of the competition, right? Or the opposing side. So the name calling can resort to use of stereotypes and slurs. Obviously, we see this all the time with Drake, you know, being the slur in this regard, and how Kendrick stans will refer to Drake now as the PDF file, refer to him as a pedo, all that kind of stuff, right? That's name calling. And best believe, it's not that, you know, I'm sure Kendrick stans will say, it's just a thing on the internet. I'm pretty sure that Kendrick's people are feeding into it. I mean, Kendrick himself says it on record. So I'm sure that he has industry folk who are in the chats and the bots who are also using this technique and feeding into that stuff. So that's a fact. I understand that. That's how these things go. Okay? So that's very easy. Name calling, right? The next one is really interesting to me, and this is what I call glittering generalities, okay? So glittering generalities, as you can see here, these are empty words or things that make products or people sound better than they are, but usually with vague, unprovable statements, right? So it's a very typical thing you hear in politics, but of course you hear this in rap all the time, especially in Kendrick, where, you know, Kendrick is a refreshing voice, that kind of stuff. It's like, what does that really mean? That's glittering generalities, okay? And if you're going to say, well, Toji, can you prove this? Well, I'll show you. Here's a perfect example of this stuff, right? If you look up Kendrick Lamar, refreshing, right? You'll notice his relatively refreshing, Kendrick Lamar, refreshing voice in rap music, refreshing ways of thinking. I mean, this is a very common thing, right? Look, every generation is impacted by collective efforts. This is from Vibe, by the way. There have always been a chosen few whose words, that's a mistype, and actions are transcendent and can break the mold or set the tone for people to follow, sparking progressive movements and new, refreshing ways of thinking, right? Enter Kendrick Lamar, right? This is a Rolling Stone article. This essentially says the same sort of thing, somewhat exciting, innovative. This is a GQ article. Unmastered was, Unmastered's Kendrick is a genius, blah, blah, Bimp Butterfly, a remarkably refreshing voice. Again, Kendrick Lamar, a refreshing voice. Again, this is just this is just propaganda, okay? Like, now, I'm not saying that means you can't use the word, but if I notice certain terms being used constantly over and over again, right, I notice that that's propaganda. And again, knowing what I know, I wouldn't be surprised if Interscope, because again, this is how media works. When you are trying to control the narrative, you have publicists and you have a machine around you. You are going to, media journalists and saying, "Can you say this?" And sometimes even use specific terms. I want you to say that this guy's refreshing or that kind of shit. So anyway, that's just basic propaganda. Now, the next type of propaganda on our list here is transfer. This technique of transfer involves transferring the positive or negative value of something onto a product, person, usually by association, right? So this one is actually pretty straightforward. I have seen this, again, with A$AP Rocky. So this is not something that is unique to, again, Kendrick. You'll notice that when A$AP Rocky, if you ever see him, and I'll show you here, maybe I have a picture, I don't. But you'll notice that A$AP Rocky, for example, has the American flag. Okay? That's transfer. That's a type of propaganda that A$AP Rocky uses constantly. I mean, this is on Live Love A$AP. This is on Long Live A$AP. This is our A$AP Rocky shows. You'll see someone literally waving the American flag. That's transfer. What Rocky's trying to do is to show you that he's someone of quality. He's a classic American dream. Like something of quality, and that using that American dream quality thing, and it's driving it to himself. It's just basic propaganda. There's nothing terrible about it, not necessarily, but again, you know what you know. With Kendrick, I would argue that his transfer and his sort of iconography that he's using is, well, the thorns, right? Now, Kendrick Lamar, you'll notice, this is something that he has definitely used on the Mr. Morale, Mr. Banal and the Mid-Steppers. So this crown that Kendrick has, you'll notice it's actually a pretty popular representation of Kendrick these days. And I think people still go with it now. Obviously, he's not wearing it all the time. But this is something that, I mean, it's so important to him that he literally has, I think, Tiffany and Co. This is like what, the Diamond Company or something like that. I think he was literally at one point selling these or something like that. This crown. So this is not something that's accidental. I mean, he's thought about this. He's like, okay, the crown has a certain symbolism. It's savior complex. It's crucifixion, right? Right. This is someone who is going to come through with a lot of heat, a lot of hate, like Jesus did, but ultimately he's here to save the human race. I find that extraordinarily pretentious, but that's Kendrick Lamar in a nutshell. See, like, look at it. Like, this nigga is the lamest grifter known to black community, right? This is literally a Kendrick show, right? Now, I didn't realize, I've never seen Kendrick live. Like, he actually maybe had the red blood makeup or whatever. That's wild. But again, now, is he the first rapper to take on religious symbolism? No. But I would argue that Kanye actually in particular really pushed this shit forward. I mean, DMX did too, but, I mean, DMX literally has flesh in my flesh, blood in my blood. But Kanye, it just kept getting pushed. And Kanye really pushed it. And then now Kendrick is just literally getting crucified on camera, on stage, which is a little weird to me. Now, what I think is interesting, of course, is the media, who are in bed with, obviously, the major corporations, will say, oh, Kendrick Lamar doesn't want to be a savior. Word? He's dressed like a savior. And he's even collaborating with jewelry companies to make savior crowns. So how is it that he doesn't want to be a savior? What's that about? Bullshit, right? Again, this is how we go. It's propaganda. And these people don't even realize that they're falling for really basic shit. So that's why they don't understand why I'm not as impressed as they are. Now, Testimonial. We already know about Testimonial. Kendrick relies so heavily on this. This is actually one of the major ones for Kendrick. He's crowned the king of the West Coast. Ice Cube says he's incredible. Nas says he's incredible. Dre says he's incredible. Snoop says he's incredible, right? Everyone says he's incredible. That's the whole idea. It's testimony. It's bought and paid for. It's relationships. This one is pretty standard. I don't think I need to provide you an example. Now, the next one, and this one is actually much more dangerous than I think people want to give it credit for, is plain folk. So the technique of plain folk takes the concept of real people and uses it as an aspirational tool. So basically what you're trying to convince the audience is that a certain product, and Kendrick Lamar is a product, just like A$AP Rocky is a product, you want to show this product as being perfect for the average person, or, like for the average person needs this product. You know what I'm saying? Because it takes what is normally lowest common denominator, a compliment, instead of being like something that you're like, that shouldn't necessarily be that lowest common denominator. That's kind of insulting. But my point is this: we already know that Kendrick Lamar and especially J. Cole use plain folk all the time. They literally portray themselves as plain folk constantly, right? Now, you'll see perfect examples of this. I'll play that in a second. But Kendrick Lamar, when he set up his Twitter page or whatever, IG page, his fans were saying, "Look, I see you. You're such a regular guy now. You're tweeting. This is again thought about. They plan these kind of things, right? We love to see you living a regular life, that kind of stuff, right? Not your savior. The humanity of Kendrick Lamar. He's a regular guy, and this is again another thing. You look at Kendrick relatable. You'll see that people talk about Kendrick as being relatable. Obviously, J. Cole is the king of that if you were to look in the top three. But here's the problem with that relatable story type shit. It's actually really dangerous. You will be surprised, and also I mentioned this here because you'll be surprised that people like Hitler were very good at this. Whenever I see somebody come out who is looking for public acceptance, and they are trying to portray themselves very much as being the regular guy, I pay extra attention to that. Because frankly, especially when I see someone like an artist or a politician, these are not regular people, or an athlete, that kind of thing. They don't go through regular everyday experiences that the everyday person does. So it's like, why are you portraying yourself as an everyman exactly? Right? And especially not just like as an everyman in terms of going through sort of emotions, right? Like, or eat, I have breakfast, you have breakfast, that kind of stuff. But really trying to portray themselves as, I think just like you. That's a big one. I think just like you. I have the same life concerns as you do, right? Where it's like, no, not really. Actually, I'm not sure you do. And again, I know that is usually those kind of people that come in that plain folk, like, I'm mediocre because I'm trying to be like you, I'm plain folk. Kanye did this really well. Is it any surprise that Kanye is a fan of Hitler, literally? I mean, this is literally what people are saying, right? And that's what he even says. Well, Hitler wasn't such a bad guy. Well, yeah, because he's studying that kind of shit. And a lot of these times, the people that do this everyman shtick are some of the wildest narcissists you've ever met in your life. That's just the truth of the matter. Anyway, so that's that. We move on. I would say the next one that's a little bit interesting is called the card stacking, right? So card stacking is a way of listing all the features or aspects of a product, person, or cause that stresses the positive qualities while obviously downplaying the negative or questionable parts, right? People do this often. Again, it's nothing really new. This one's a little trickier to point out, right? Because it requires knowing a lot about the particular person, cause, product, to be able to notify and to be able to see, oh wait, they're mentioning all this shit, but they haven't actually mentioned this thing, right? I'll give you a perfect example, right? So, you know, and usually it's kind of stacked one after the other. So, for example, in this review, Good Kid, Mad City, all of this weighty material might make Good Kid, Mad City sound like a bit of a drag. But the miracle of this album is how it ties straightforward rap thrills, dazzling lyrical virtuosity, slick quotables, pulverizing beats, star turn from guest rappers, right? They're stacking it directly to its narrative. Now, that's great. But the question is, has this been done before? Again, it's downplaying the aspect of the fact that it's straightforward. I mean, it does mention it slightly, but it's kind of passes you by. It doesn't analyze the fact that this shit is actually very trite and straightforward. It's been done a million times. So why should I care, right? I mean, literally, you see here, Good Kid. This is also from, I believe, Rolling Stone. This was rated 115th best album. You'll see here, Good Kid is his story of growing up in Compton, surrounded by gunfire, gang warfare, police brutality, drugs, liquor, dead friends, right? Stacking, right? All the qualities, yeah, I get in the rap album, right? Again, to the casuals, they want to hear all this shit. But you're missing the point, is it's downplaying, well, has this been done before? Yes, it has. It's actually been done a gazillion times. What makes his story special? Just because you can list out all the things that happen on this album to an audience that's not familiar with it doesn't mean that it's not trite, right? Again, something to consider. Now, and I think the last one that I want to get to, and this is the most interesting one because, again, the card stacking one requires more context. That one is usually trickier to figure out because you need to know shit. Is Bandwagon, okay? And Bandwagon is always very, very obvious. This is the technique that encourages people to join or take part in something because everyone else is doing it, right? This one is very, very common in hip-hop. And it plays into our sense of fear, okay? So because if it's a basic survival mechanism. If you're standing here and most people are running in one direction, the first thing you're thinking about is, shit, what do I got to run away from? They're all running away from something. I'm going to follow them, right? So that's why Bandwagon is, I would argue, the most powerful or one of the most powerful propaganda tools out here. And how do I know that Kendrick Lamar and his team use Bandwagon? Well, because it's pretty obvious to me. They talk about constantly how much everyone is streaming Kendrick Lamar shit, right? So I'll get to the comments that I get about this. But look, Kendrick Lamar hits a new Billboard chart for the first time this week, twice. Yay, from Forbes, right? It's all showing you Kendrick Lamar is being streamed out here. Never mind that there are bots and the internet is full of bots, right? Kendrick Lamar's Good Kid, Mad City breaks records 12 years after debut, right? Bro, Good Kid, Mad City been on Billboard almost 12 years straight. You know what I'm saying? Like, they care about these things. Not like us, it's broken the record for the most streams in a single day. This is all Bandwagon. This is all, yo, listen. People are listening to the shit. You need to get up on this, right? Kendrick Lamar is not like us, breaks Drake's record. Oh my God, right? People are turning the tide on Drake and they're going to Kendrick. Propaganda. Okay? Now, again, I personally don't care about this shit. You guys are going to say, yo, you know, everybody brags about streams. Maybe, maybe not. But I know for a fact that me personally, as an A$AP Rocky fan, and a rap fan, I don't even care what people stream. And you've seen me talk about Rocky, Live Love, A$AP constantly. You've never heard me mention how much something streamed or whatever. I just don't care. It is so irrelevant. When I was a kid, that stuff was irrelevant to me. Who was selling what? I don't care. Now, of course, hip-hop is obsessed with that stuff because hip-hop has become more pop and there's way more propaganda now than there used to be. And that's why you're seeing that shit. And if you say, look, yo, that's just them. No, I know that Kendrick Lamar stands are big on this shit. And I'll tell you why. Here's, shout out to KT, the GOAT, I'm putting you on blast here. But literally, this whole long-ass comment is about charting. Who's charting? Kendrick Lamar. Well, how does he have the longest album to ever remain on Billboard? Right? Blah, blah. This is all Bandwagon shit. That's his argument. His argument about why Kendrick is dope is because his albums is charting for a long time. Again, doesn't impress me, but to someone that is a follower, that shit's impressive. But again, I'm not the follower type, which is why you are here with my channel, right? And not with the countless others. All they do is just dick ride and follow opinion. So, The truth of the matter is this, right? At the end of the day, propaganda is something that I think people should learn. They should figure out what makes something like propaganda, really. Because it's actually really important. Like, the history of people trying to learn about propaganda goes back to the propaganda analysis from the 40s. I mean, this is nothing new. Human beings have certain behaviors that they're always going to do, right? And in particular, when there's issues of war, there's cultural war, real war, you need to be on top of propaganda. The audience needs to understand how this stuff happens. People in hip-hop have no idea how propaganda works and what is involved in making propaganda. And I think that's a huge problem. Now, I will say in conclusion, this is why really any YouTube channel that's hip-hop oriented, aside from the foundation, I want to shout out Jaquan, really. There's probably a couple of others. But the truth of the matter is that none of y'all can fuck with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna be arrogant right now. I went to school. I'm smarter than all of y'all. And I know much more about hip hop than all of y'all. Right? And you're gonna say, yo, that's arrogant. It is what it is, man. Like, get on my level. Start talking about shit that matters instead of talking about irrelevant shit. I watch so many of these channels sometimes and I'm trying to see if they have a kernel of original thought or something with insight. It's not there. And y'all want me to then debate these guys? Like, I'll freaking run over them. In fact, actually, we can't even have common ground, unfortunately, because a lot of them are so stuck in a world built by propaganda that there's no way to understand where I'm coming from, right? I've never pretended to be right about everything. That's not how I operate. But what I do is I operate by trying to be insightful about shit. And by doing that, most of the times I'm going to get it right. There's a couple of times I'm sure that I'll get it wrong. But if you don't even attempt to look deeper, you're probably never going to get it right. Or, you know, a broken clock is right, what, twice a day? So yeah, you might be that broken clock. Anyway, long story short, I appreciate y'all rocking with my channel. As always, stay woke, as they would say. Don't fall for the hype. It's all bullshit. And again, like what you like. If you like Kendrick Lamar, I got no problems with people liking Kendrick Lamar's music, really, in grand scheme of things. What I have an issue with is the propaganda behind Kendrick and how Kendrick and his team use propaganda, to me, that damages rap in the grand scheme of things, because it causes rap to look very, very circular. They're literally removing aspects of hip-hop to pretend like they're the ones that are the greatest at doing this, or one of the greats. And I'm sitting there going like, no, you're not. You're erasing everybody else before you that did this exact same shit. That was in terms of talking about street life, talking about coming up, all that stuff. And frankly, they did it way better than you. This is why Kendrick Lamar stands and all that shit's so dangerous, because they'll say, yeah, you know, I'm in the tradition of Tupac, Cube, Nas, but it's like there's way more rappers besides them, okay? Don't try to, whittle down the culture. No rapper is bigger than the culture of hip-hop. I don't care who it is. You take Nas out of hip-hop, hip-hop's still fucking amazing. You take Jay out of hip-hop, hip-hop's still amazing. But in the mind of a Kendrick stan, you take Kendrick out of hip-hop, hip-hop's not worth listening to. And that's the problem, right? There are guys on my channel, I played Black Poet. I'm gonna put this on right now so you all know. But Black Poet, this shit is better written than anything I've ever heard from Kendrick or Rocky. Alright, any of these new niggas. Drake, this is some real, like, all the shootouts, cops, selling drugs, all that street shit that Kendrick Lamar gets tons of credit for has been done a million times. Day chopping up, trying to make that dough when it's hot as fuck. That's real. Whew. Slow down, Gunn. He told you. This track is too real. This track's, you should listen to it on your own. But, do you understand the consequence of what you're dealing with? Judge slabs the hammer, a life sentence. Like, so this I must mention, watch your back, right? People been doing this, but if you keep placing Kendrick Lamar and these guys on pedestals, and they are doing this deliberately to put themselves on a pedestal, what you're doing is you're writing guys out like Black Poet. And you might say, oh, who cares about Black Poet? I care about Black Poet. I like rap, right? You're not going to write him out of history. Are you kidding me? Especially when he's done way better shit than Kendrick? No. We're not doing that, okay? Anyway, peace and love to y'all. Thank you for checking me out, as always. 1.